All right, so we're diving into some news from the Faroe Islands this week, covering the main political happenings and domestic stories over the past 7 days. Then we'll wrap up with a detailed look at the weather we've seen.
Sounds good.
Before we jump in, just a quick reminder that you can find more reports like this on the YouTube channel PalsFundamentals.
Lots of great content over there.
Now, we're going to stick to the facts here, presenting the news as it's been reported without adding our own opinions or getting into any speculation. You already know the basics of the North Atlantic region, so we can skip right to the heart of the matter. So let's kick things off with politics. What's been happening on that front in the Faroe Islands this past week?
Well, it seems like the law officer, the Ludnarv, has been continuing their work on reforms.
Okay, so the Lugmar, that's essentially the equivalent of a prime minister, right?
Exactly, the head of the government in the Faroes. Our sources didn't delve into the specifics of these reforms, but it shows they're actively working on shaping policy.
Got it. So ongoing reform efforts from the Lugmar. Anything else happening on the political scene?
There have also been discussions among party leaders about the Faroe Islands and their potential membership in the Nordic Council.
Ah, the Nordic Council, right. That's the intergovernmental forum for cooperation among the Nordic countries. So these discussions suggest it's a significant topic in Faroese politics.
Absolutely. It seems to be a recurring point of discussion and debate.
Makes sense. And what about domestic affairs? Any notable events or meetings there?
Well, there was a meeting between the leaders of the Equality Committee, known as Jamstunendin, and Demokratia, which focuses on democratic participation.
Interesting. And who did they meet with?
They met with the Minister for Gender Equality, the Landsbankin and Búskaparráðið.
So a meeting focused on equality initiatives. What was the main topic of discussion?
They primarily talked about the activities and progress made by both the committee and Demokratia over the past year.
It's great that these groups are working with the government to promote equality. Shifting gears a bit, there was a mention of entering viewpoints on mobile phone usage in the Faroe Islands.
Yes, there seems to be some disagreement there. Only 3 members of parliament, or tingmen, support a complete ban on mobile phones.
A total ban? That seems pretty drastic.
It does, and it doesn't appear to have much support. However, the People's Party, the Folkeflokkurinn, wants to ban mobile phones specifically in schools.
So a more targeted approach rather than a complete ban. Makes sense. Any other noteworthy political statements or declarations?
There was a declaration emphasizing the importance of cooperation and transparency in public administration.
Those are certainly crucial for good governance.
Definitely. These principles are generally considered essential for an effective and accountable government.
Agreed. So that covers the main political developments. What about economic news from the Faroe Islands this past week?
Smearl Line, the Faroese shipping company, announced some pretty positive financial results for 2024.
Okay, tell me more. How do they do?
They reported a pre-tax profit of 127 million Danish kroner and an operating profit of 286 million.
Wow, those are some strong numbers. Looks like they're in a good position.
They are, and they have big plans for the future.
Oh, like what?
They're going to build 2 new cargo ships in China, with delivery expected around mid-2026.
New ships? That's a major investment. Anything else?
They're also planning to build a new head office, a terminal, and a warehouse in Tórshavn. That's also expected to be finished in 2026.
So significant expansion on the horizon for Smearl Line. That's great to hear. Moving on, there were some recommendations from Landsbankin and the Economic Council, right?
Yeah, both of them, Landsbankin being the central bank of the Faroe Islands and the Economic Council, which advises the government, recommended cost-benefit analyses for major infrastructure projects.
So they're saying, let's be sure these projects are worth the money and benefit society.
Exactly. They want to ensure efficient use of public funds and make sure that investments are truly worthwhile.
Sounds prudent. What about the long-term outlook? Any thoughts on that?
Well, the central bank stressed the need for balance between present needs and the needs of future generations.
Thinking about sustainability and the long-term impact.
Yes, and the Economic Council actually issued a warning about the sustainability of the current fiscal policy.
Oh, that sounds serious. What are their concerns?
They're worried about demographic changes, suggesting that expenditures could exceed revenues in the future if things stay as they are.
An aging population putting pressure on public finances?
Pretty much. They emphasize the need for expenditure control and a review of revenue sources to maintain current welfare levels.
So tighten the belt and look for ways to boost income.
Essentially, yes. They even suggested reviewing or potentially eliminating some existing systems.
Which systems did they single out?
They mentioned the home fleet arrangements, the support for local fishing vessels, and the mackerel subsidies that go to that fleet.
Okay, so reevaluating those support systems. Anything else?
They also mention seafarers' deductions and the fish processing system, the Fiskiverkiskapanin. It's worth noting those last two aren't directly funded by the government, but they are legally binding and can have a big impact on the economics of those sectors.
So they're suggesting a comprehensive review of various programs and regulations to see if they're still serving their purpose effectively.
Right, and it seems like the government has responded to at least some of these recommendations.
Really? In what way?
They've agreed to reduce the foreign tax deduction and make changes to travel allowances and support for people with double households. They're also adjusting pension payments for cohabiting couples to align them with married pensioners.
So taking steps to address some of the financial concerns raised by the Economic Council, that's a good sign. Now let's switch gears and talk about social issues. Was there anything significant happening on that front?
There was a report of a large turnout for the funeral of Hans Jacob Hyam. We don't have any information about him, but the large number of attendees suggests he was a well-respected figure in the community.
It sounds like he was. It's always touching to see a community come together like that. This past week also marked an important anniversary for women in Faroese politics, didn't it?
It did. It was the 50th anniversary of women holding seats in the Faroese parliament, the Lekting.
That's a big milestone.
It is. Jonna Hendrickson was specifically mentioned as the first woman to hold a permanent seat, a landmark moment in Faroese political history.
50 years of women in parliament, that's fantastic progress.
Agreed. There was also a brief mention of the need for special arrangements to help those at risk of suicide.
That's an important issue to address. Having the right support systems in place is crucial. Any other social news?
There's an intention to reorganize Televarpi, the Faroese broadcasting company.
Interesting. No details on the reasons behind the reorganization.
Not in the information we have.
Okay, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Now let's move on to some other domestic news from the Faroe Islands this past week. What's happening in Ness Municipality?
Ness Municipality reached an agreement with the construction company, KBH, to renovate the older part of the Friðarskúlin.
Friðarskúlin, what is that exactly?
It's an after-school care facility for children.
So they're investing in facilities for children and families.
They are, and there's also news about the swimming pool in Gundadalur.
What about it?
The expansion of the Swimmihöllini í Gundadali, the swimming pool in Gundadalur, has been approved.
That's great news for the community. Expanding recreational facilities is always a positive step.
Definitely. And KBH, the construction company we mentioned earlier, will also be handling the Friðarskúlin renovation.
So they're busy with multiple projects in the municipality. What about the healthcare system? Any updates from VH?
VH, the Joint Hospital Services, reported having no patients awaiting discharge in hospitals.
That's a good sign. Suggests things are running smoothly.
It does, and there was also the annual general meeting of the Housing Association for Shared Ownership, or Áfugafélagi Lúthíbús.
Shared ownership housing? That's an interesting model.
It is. It provides an alternative way for people to become homeowners.
Good to see different housing options being explored. Lastly, any news from the University of the Faroe Islands?
Yes, the Citre awarded 1.5 million Danish kroner and an honorary prize for outstanding teaching.
Recognition for excellence in education, that's fantastic. It's so important to celebrate dedicated educators. Now, before we move on to the weather, let's touch on a couple of international news items relevant to the Faroe Islands. What's happening in Iceland?
There's been a story about the Icelandic Minister for Children and Education who had a child with a 15-year-old boy when she was 22. It's a sensitive and complex situation.
Definitely a delicate matter. And what about Denmark?
Denmark is making changes to their primary school law.
What kind of changes?
They're amending the law to give teachers more authority to intervene in situations involving student violence.
So empowering teachers to address disruptive or aggressive behavior in the classroom.
That's the goal.
Makes sense. Safety in schools is paramount. Well, that wraps up our review of Faroese politics and domestic news for the past weeks. Now let's dive into the weather report.
Okay, so starting with Friday, March 21st, the Faroe Islands saw fresh to strong southerly winds with overcast skies and rain or showers.
Sounds like a typical Faroese day.
It does, doesn't it? But it got better later in the day, becoming partly cloudy and mostly dry in the afternoon and evening. Temperatures were between 5 and 9 degrees Celsius, dropping to about 1 degree overnight.
Okay, so a bit of a mixed bag on Friday. How about Saturday, March 22nd?
Saturday started with clearing skies early in the morning and winds turning westerly to northerly. It was a fresh breeze to fresh northerly winds with overcast skies and rain in the morning.
Ah, so the rain stuck around.
It did, at least for the morning. By the afternoon, the winds were lighter and more northerly, with variable clouds and some showers. It stayed mostly dry overnight. Temperatures were between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius during the day, dropping to between -1 and +5 degrees overnight.
Another day with a mix of conditions. What about Sunday, the 23rd?
Sunday was a bit calmer. There were light winds from various directions with overcast skies, but it was mostly dry. However, the winds picked up in the evening and into the night, becoming a fresh breeze to fresh southwesterly wind, and it started raining. Temperatures were between 4 and 8 degrees Celsius that day.
So Sunday started calm, but ended a bit wetter. How about Monday, the start of the work week?
Monday was windy and rainy. It started with a fresh breeze to fresh southwesterly wind, overcast skies, and rain. In the afternoon, the wind shifted at a northerly to northwesterly direction, still a light to fresh breeze, but still overcast with showers. By the evening, things calmed down again with light winds from various directions. Temperatures reached 7 to 9 degrees Celsius during the day, dropping to 3 to 6 degrees in the evening.
So Monday was definitely a wet and windy one. What about Tuesday, March 25th?
Tuesday saw some differences depending on where you were in the Faroe Islands. North of the islands, there were light winds from various directions, but south of the islands, there was a fresh breeze to fresh northwesterly wind, which later eased to a light to fresh westerly or southwesterly breeze. There were variable clouds with a chance of isolated showers, and temperatures were between 6 and 9 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so a bit more varied on Tuesday, depending on location. And finally, what about Wednesday, March 26th?
Wednesday started with a fresh breeze to fresh southwesterly wind, cloudy skies, and rain or showers. As the day went on, the winds got stronger, reaching strong to gale force from the southwest, later shifting to the west. There were variable clouds and rain, and there was even a chance of sleet in the evening. Temperatures were between +6 and +9 degrees Celsius during the day, dropping to between +4 and +7 in the evening.
So a week of typical Faroese weather with some calmer days and some wilder ones? Quite the mix.
It was.
Well, that brings us to the end of this news report. We've covered the key political and domestic news from the Faroe Islands over the past 7 days, followed by a detailed weather report, all based on the information from our sources. We've presented this information without adding our own opinions or speculation.
And as always, the sources are linked below.
So be sure to check those out.
And just a reminder, this has been an AI-generated news report.
We'll see you next time.